you are very methodical and strategic when things relate to fundraising. And you managed to build a pretty impressive cap table, both from angel investors' perspective, but also bringing really high quality local and global funds. So, what was your approach? How your approach towards fundraising is evolving as you mature as a leader of a venture backed company? And what are some of the things that other founders can learn from your experience?
Sure. I learned a lot, and I learned by doing mistakes, right? Um,
It's the best way to
it's
learn.
well, it's the most painful way to learn as well, right?
But you learn for good.
You learn for good. That's right. So when we left 99, it was not hard at all to get and secure our first round.
Which was 3 million?
That was 1.5 million, but back in 2018, when numbers were a little bit different than the reality we live in today. Uh, so we started the company in October 2018. In December, we received our first term sheet with just an idea and a PowerPoint. That in a sense was very harmful to us because we thought it would always be that way.
That easy.
That easy, exactly. And we were not so diligent with the process back then. So when we were hallucinating and thinking that we could go for a larger round in the end of 2019, beginning of 2020, we were just contacting the obvious names, the ones that are always on the news, and doing
TechCrunch usual suspects.
exactly, and trying to do something quick and very niched at the same time. It obviously failed because we didn't build a large enough top of the funnel conversations to fuel the process. And when it was January 2020, a potential leader that was very, very, very advanced and was one of the names that we wanted decided they were not going to invest. We were left with very few months of cash of runway and no one hot in the pipeline. So we had to restart the round from zero. And then pandemic came. That was the worst time in our history for sure, because we at that time were very pressed with the very small runaway, no investors willing to back us up, the pandemic causing the world to a halt. And it was hard. We managed to get a new round in May, but it was not without paying the high price of one, letting a lot of people go at that time. Well, not a lot, but half of the team, which were 15 people at that point.
It was probably more painful because it was a close and
It
a
was a
relatively
close
small
knit,
team.
yes. So it was a hard process. And from that moment on, I said, okay, we managed to survive. I'm not going to let this happen again. So from the day one after the check hit our bank account, I started running a thorough process, preparing for the next round. And all the contacts that we opened up for that present round, I kept on a very, very tight CRM where I could know how hot the conversation was, how important that conversation was for us and for the investors, and how often were we touching base. And through that process, I was building relationship throughout the time, constantly updating interesting potential partners, adding new potential partners as we go, always asking for referrals and connections. So when it was the time to do the Series A, I was having already a very intense push from the market to do the funding round. So it was not something that I was thinking, well, I think this is time now to do. It was something that was coming from the market as feedback saying, I think you were ready. Aren't you going to fundraise soon? Let's keep in touch. And when I did it, I was withholding a lot of people asking me for more information, for spreadsheets and so on. I was withholding everyone until the point that I opened up a VDR, a virtual data room, with all the information there at the same time to everyone. So I did a very
How many leads did you have in this? Did you have in the funnel?
At that point, I had 100 VCs that I was managing. I sent out the invitation to about 50-ish to participate in the round.
And what was your approach towards selecting or thinking about how to select partners? You mentioned that for the first round, you targeted, I mean, not for the first small round, but when you started Raise Next Round, you were targeting the usual suspects. How did your approach towards selecting potential partners change? And what did you learn about the VC founder partnership during this ride?
So I read a lot about the mechanics and the incentives around the VCs. One thing that I learned, and I think it was the most important factor, that VCs and VC partners talk to each other a lot. They share a lot of their funnel, a lot of their leads. And
because they want to share risks.
They want to share risks. They want to validate if it's a good opportunity or not. And they typically go out to have drinks as well. So they are just like sometimes even bragging about themselves. Oh, look at this guy that we're advancing and everything. So one thing that is very important is the number of times that a partner heard about your company, not from yourself. Empirically, it to me made a lot of sense to have as much conversations as possible, to have as many people talking about the company and influence a potential VC that I wanted to target from multiple sources. That made a lot of difference because it not only gets you in front of the right partner, but it also gets you in front of them in the right state of mind because they've heard from you many times before. They are already excited about learning more. It's completely different. And one thing that I never did during this entire process is to cold call anyone. I always asked someone who was excited about Swap to introduce me to a new partner. So the first approach to selecting was not selecting at all. Anyone that would be happy to talk to me, I would be happy to talk to as well, because that creates that effect. The second thing is during those conversations that are not targeting to really a fundraise, but rather just building a relationship, I talk about the company for a while, obviously, but then I steer the conversation towards the industry and start doing problem solving and learning and just sharing information. That gives me two things. One, that time that I'm spending is not just selling company. It's actually instructing me about strategy, is giving me information about the market, is providing me with competitive analysis. So there is a lot of things that you can extract from a conversation like this. And during that process, you also learn who knows more about the industry, who could be a potential asset for further discussions, right? In the end, your investors will be the people that will discuss with you your strategy. Later down the road, you might create a full professional board. But at the early days, it's your investors who are sitting on your board that you are discussing strategy and the challenges with. So you might as well learn how to do that before they become your investor and you are tied with them for 10 years or so.
When you qualified those 50 leads and you opened the data room for all of them, what was your approach towards getting to closing of the round? How did you manage that relationships since that point?
So I received the term sheet 3 days after I opened the data room. And
And we have to say that it was
it
2021.
was, it was. It
So
was a different
there was
time.
a little bit of bonanza in fintech, and
Totally.
40% of capital flew to fintech. So there was a little bit of free riding opportunity from the market perspective.
Of course. But that is associated with the element of the market telling me when to open the data room, not the other way around. So when I opened the data room, I had about 10 VCs that were constantly pressing me to open it already, that were meeting with me once every other week to get updates. So I felt it was really hot. Not only that, I was providing pieces of information selectively to some of them in the sense of building trust and building the case. So when I received the term sheet, the partner that did it, Alex at Tiger, he was building the case preemptively before I opened the data room. So it was not that, so, okay, I'm just writing checks without diligence. So he had already done all the diligence before. He was basically just sitting and waiting for me to say, go, and go. After that, then it became a completely different process, because 3 days in, after I opened the data room, I sent out another email to all those players saying, well, look, guys, we now have a term sheet on the table. Let's schedule meetings. And I opened up the agenda, obviously, with 5 to 10 meetings every day to talk with all of those potential players in the next 4 or 5 days, to now go through a Q&A, see if they have additional questions, and trying to get more people on board.